Being Black in America comes with its challenges. However, we understand that enlightenment through education is the oppressor's worst fear. By bridging the gap between academia and the people, our purpose is to equip you with knowledge that breaks down barriers during your journey towards truth and freedom. Welcome to the Black and Highly Dangerous Podcast.
Yeah, Daph, what's going on? What's going on? How you been?
Been pretty good. This is the last week of data collection before spring break. So I'm just trying to push through before I get a little rest next week.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, I got spring break coming up too. I know we talked about that last podcast. And yeah, I've been busy with it's like midterms as well, middle of semester. So I've been grading a lot of midterm papers and midterm evaluations, and then also getting students registered for classes next semester. So it's been kind of crazy. And it'll continue this upcoming week, but then spring break. So take that nice vacation.
See, I was lucky. I got a little mini getaway this past weekend in Orlando. So that kind of rejuvenated me a bit, the sun, because it's been cold and rainy.
That's true.
So that rejuvenated me. Now I'm just like Saturday.
That's good. Yeah, that's good. Getting a little sun. That is true. When I think about it, I was like, I don't know if I've seen that much sun lately. Or like, it felt the sun rays.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of like seasonal depression? Like how when you don't see the sun, it actually really has an effect on your mood.
Yeah, I've heard of stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I know in some places, I can't remember where, that don't get a lot of sunlight, they have like special lamps or something like that to like imitate sun rays.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's some real stuff.
Yeah.
So
I know we needed that in Lafayette.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Woo, that cold, man. I never forget that. I always tell people, man, like that wind, I'll never forget that. That's something about Lafayette for sure. That Indiana wind, that wind chill, that hits any exposed skin. That hurts so bad.
Yeah, definitely.
But all right, we got some old Lord news ready to rock.
Yeah, we got a little bit this week.
All right, let's get into it. Hello, and welcome to BHD News, where we give you the most current and eye-opening old Lord news of the week. Join us as we present news that'll make you want to say,
Okay, so I have to hurry. You heard about the 16 count indictment against Jussie Smollett?
16.
16 for each lie he told.
Oh, wow, that's what it's for?
I think that's
I was wondering, like, dang, what he do 16? But yeah, 16 lies, okay.
Yeah, and I think, he said that it was kind of overkill. I've noticed a lot of people who are like, yes, he should be held accountable, but, we didn't even hold, was it Laquan McDonald, who got 16 shots, who got shot 16 times by a Chicago police officer?
Yeah,
they didn't return anything?
It was McDonald, I believe. Yep.
And so it's just kind of like, come on, y'all. Y'all doing a whole lot.
Yeah, they doing the
hold
most.
yourselves accountable.
And now the police officers, when they do their job, when somebody lied.
Yes.
That's wild.
Oh, yeah. So just, wanted to mention that because
and I've seen a lot of other critique about this too, like, all the stories we've done, like like Wild Black, when people calling police officers and be lying or fabricating stories and be like, people are saying, where's the penalty for these folks, that are doing essentially the same thing, which is true in a lot of ways.
Yeah. So for our next story, so I guess a private school teacher wanted to continue her Black History Month lessons. A private school teacher in Westchester County, New York, decided to teach students about, chattel slavery. And she did so by having a mock auction in her class. And during the auction, she had white students to buy their Black classmates.
Oh, my goodness. Come on, y'all. This is crazy.
Oh goodness.
Oh man, I'm sure that not go over well. Did they say anything like at least far as the black students, they went along with it, or how old were they? Does it say? Grade
In
or
fifth grade, fifth
fifth
grade. So
grade?
that's kind of that age where
Yeah.
you wanna obey the teacher.
Yeah.
It clearly went through because the parents are like pissed
I
off.
bet. Oh, I bet I would be too.
Yeah, and like getting emails, it's kind of like it's so unnecessary. That reminds me, like in Mississippi, I think a teacher or something had the kids picking cotton. Like, dude, you don't have to actually go through with it to
You
teach that
don't.
lesson.
You don't.
Yeah.
That's wild. It's funny because even I think about like for one of my classes, my race crime and punishment class, I have students, they present each week and they have to do an activity. But I screen the activities. I tell them to send them the day before so I can okay it or not. And so one time there was students who were like trying to do like this role play of like slavery and stuff along those lines. And I did that so fast.
Nah.
I'm like, y'all are bugging, man. But this is why I was like, I'm glad I screened them because, who knows, you're getting up in class and they come up with this crazy activity.
Yeah, that was a good idea.
And I ain't going to be the one on the news like,
right?
It's just in Professor of New York.
And black Twitter drag you.
Oh, I'd be so done.
So funny. Speaking of being so done, a Republican mayor in Maine had to step down after some of his text messages were leaked. This Maine mayor referred to elderly black people in text messages as antique farm equipment.
What?
Yes. And I guess he's referring to, I don't know, slave labor. I don't know, but he stepped down because it's so ridiculous.
Yeah, that's wild, man. What's up with these politicians, man? Still saying these ridiculous things like on record or around people and then getting caught up. Like, at least they're getting caught, though. That's a good thing. Because we don't want them in office with those kind of viewpoints and perspectives, man.
Yeah.
And wasn't there a story, too, about a woman? I don't know. She was in Maryland. I think she was...
yeah. I think she's like a state representative or a state, senator or something like that. And I can't remember the...
She was talking about PG County and she referred to as the nigga district.
Oh, yeah.
Wildin', yo.
Yeah, because she didn't want to knock on doors or something.
Yeah.
She didn't want to campaign in that area.
Like, come on, y'all. Just some things you should just know you should know better, man. And then coming out all these apologies after the fact. And nothing to apologize. Go ahead and step down and say your goodbyes.
And see, this is why we need... we need better representation because the people that have these mindsets are the people who are responsible for creating laws that benefit everybody. Do you really think they're going to be benefiting everybody when they think of black people as the N word or maybe Latino people as like a derogatory word or like any other person? Do you really think they're going to have our back?
Yeah, that's true. And the funny thing is she's a Democrat, right? And so they be getting the black vote. But she don't want to go knock on black doors.
And that's the thing. Some Democratic politicians are just really building the case that some people have to say, like, they're all the same. Because that's why a lot of people did not want to vote for Hillary in 2016. They're like, oh, Democrats and Republicans are all the same. Trump and Hillary, they're both the same. And it's kind of like, with as many Democrats who have come out with these like crazy racist stories or antics, it's kind of like, how can you argue with that? How can you push people to say, hey, we really need to get out this Democratic vote to, get so-and-so out when, they can point to all of these incidents over the past couple years to be like, these people aren't going to serve my interests.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
So, yeah, that sucks. But speaking of, there are some politicians out here trying to do some good. And this is kind of one of those stories. So last year, a school in Sugar Land, Texas was supposed to be, beginning like groundbreaking to build a new school. Well, while they were digging, they actually found the graves of 95 freed slaves who were used as like prison labor. So I don't know if people know this, but after slavery officially ended, a lot of states created black codes as a way of criminalizing formerly enslaved African Americans.
Mm-hmm.
And, they would be arrested and, given sentences for like things like loitering, or, if they didn't have money on them, they couldn't prove that they, had jobs. So vagrancy, just like
Yeah.
ridiculous things. And so they would arrest them, try them immediately, and then put them to work. They called it like
Convict
prisoner.
leasing.
Yeah. Convict leasing. And it is suspected that these 95 graves were people who were a part of like the convict leasing scheme. And a state representative, Ron Reynolds, actually wants to kind of right that wrong and has proposed $95 million in reparations to the descendants of the 95 victims of the convict leasing system in Sugarland.
Interesting.
Yes. The representative also wants to replace the Confederate monument in the Capitol with a plaque to honor the victims of convict leasing, wants to commission a study to determine the legacy of convict leasing, and to establish a museum to educate on the history of convict leasing. Because, a lot of these businesses after slavery ended were like economically depressed. And they instituted a new form of slavery, which helped to build a lot of businesses that are still in business today.
Yep.
There's this book called Slavery by Another Name, and the author actually names some of the companies. I can't remember them off the top of my head, but it's an amazing book. And, major companies that started like in the late 1800s, early 1900s, a lot of them were built by essentially slave labor, because they were arresting Black people for stupid crimes, trying them on the spot, and sentencing them to work labor and leasing them out to different states. So, when they say Black people built this country, they weren't just talking about the 400 years of chattel slavery. We're also talking about convict leasing, just a lot of stuff.
Yep. No, yeah. Douglas Blackmun wrote that book, Slavery by Another Name. And you're right. It follows the time period post-slavery, Civil War up until World War II, and pretty much shows how slavery was just repackaged and repurposed in a lot of ways. So yeah, definitely suggest taking out that book. But, and also the point about reparations too, I think we should touch that, in the last episode of the month when we kind of talk about particular things and reparations should be, because a lot of the like Democratic candidates, that's been like people have been asking those questions about reparations. Do they believe in reparations and stuff like that, and kind of what that looks like. So I think that'd be interesting thing to talk about as well.
And I just want to pour this little tea a little bit. Mass incarceration is slavery by another name as well.
Yes, it is.
When we think about, imprisoned individuals fighting wildfires for like $1 a day or whatever the crazy amount was.
That's wild.
Come on now, that's slavery too. So
it is, man. So we gotta really have real conversations about this and know it has not ended. It just looks different.
It just looks
a little
different.
bit more hidden.
Child, because when we talk about when Kamala Harris's office argued about how releasing the nonviolent offenders would impact the labor.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like that should not go into the calculations or any type of considerations for when we're trying to release people.
Yeah, people like impact the labor. People would lose jobs. La la la. Yo, this is like I've talked to CEOs before, and they were like, essentially like their job. If you care about your job, it's like you want to work yourself out of a job, right? You don't want these people to come back. Is the idea, and so if you're like, oh, we need you here so we can keep working. No, that's not the way the system should work.
Yeah,
so it's kind of sick in a lot of ways, and the whole nonviolent thing is like. Everybody wonders why America's incarceration rates are so much higher than the other countries. And the large part of the reason we punish violent crimes on the same rate as other countries, but when it comes to nonviolent offenses, we're just way more punitive than other countries.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is why, nonviolent offenses are the ones that are targeted as far as getting released, because other countries don't even lock up people who commit a lot of their nonviolent offenses. So it begs the question, but we'll see.
Well, today, we've talking about narratives from the past, and today we're going to be speaking with someone who's trying to, shape narratives related to the Black American community in the 21st century, and is doing it, in business form.
Yeah. Today we'll be interviewing a guy by the name of Kirk Brown, who is the founder of what is known as Melanin Meetups, which is based out in LA. And, he has a background in business, and it's a really cool, platform that he's been building. And we're gonna talk a lot about it during the interview and shed more light about it. But it's just actually a way for kind of us young Black millennials to connect, share their own lived experiences, talk about things, the way advancing their community, and a lot of other things. And I think, and they're moving forward for a lot of other cool ideas that we'll talk about. He'll share during the interview too. But I think it's like a pretty cool look of we talk about business and in traditional forms of bringing in revenue and profit, but this is also business in a way to get the community engaged and keep conversations moving forward, almost like a think tank, if you will.
Yeah. Isn't that what he called, a think platform? What does he call it?
I think so. I think something like that. I can't remember. Yeah.
So it's cool. I feel like he's doing the work that we're trying to do on BHD in live format, have these conversations, talk about these ideas. So really cool to have him on and ready to, start the conversation.
All right. You ready to get to it, Dad?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we'll catch up with y'all afterwards.
For today's episode, we continue our focus on highlighting the work and experiences of Black business owners by interviewing Kirk Brown, the founder of Melanin Meetups. This LA-based organization was created as a safe space where young Black Americans can connect to share experiences, ideas, and insight in order to heal and advance themselves and the community. During our conversation, we discussed Kirk's vision for Melanin Meetups, how the platform is working to shape the future of Black America's narrative in the 21st century, and advice on how others can begin to mobilize through ideas, discussions, and differences in their own communities. Welcome, Kirk Brown.
Hi, guys. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we're so excited to have this conversation.
Yes, for sure. So one of the things we like to do, Kirk, before we get into, the nitty gritty of the interview and kind of what you do, is have our guests introduce themselves to our audience. So tell us a little bit about yourself, who's Kirk, and kind of what you do.
Cool. So my name is full name, Kirk Kennedy Brown, raised in Virginia, military brat, went to school in Philly at UPenn, did the Wharton School. From there, worked a little bit in New York, and then came out here to Los Angeles, where I'm currently based. As of right now, I am a marketing manager at a fintech company by day, but by night, I am building out Melanin Meetups, which I'm incredibly proud of and pushing forward in 2019. So
nice.
Okay, you fancy Wharton, honey.
Hey.
I'll just say, but no, congrats. That's really big. You're doing it. So, you are, you're a businessman by day, but I mean, Melanin Meetups is also a business, but it also seems to branch out into the social world. So can you give us more details about Melanin Meetups, and why you decided to start this platform, especially when you have a day job?
Right. So Melanin Meetups, the way that I brand it, first and foremost, I've always been fascinated by the think tanks within this country. And I wanted a think platform, as I call it, or a think tank to speak to young Black Americans. So essentially what Melanin Meetups is, it's a think platform where young Black professionals meet monthly to connect and develop and find solutions to help heal, first and foremost, heal and advance the Black American community. And for me, what started it, we started it last year, last year, 2019, April 2017. And what inspired me to do it was partly because of the election of 2016. That was, I believe, not necessarily a shock to some of us, but it was still nevertheless eye-opening. And it made me, it made me wonder, how do we want to move forward in the 21st century, the Black American community, and what do we want to look like? And I always tell the story the story that I always tell is that in second grade, Miss Gilbert's class, I'll never forget, we had to map out a tree of our lineage. And for me, I could only go back so far, as is the story for most, I feel, Black Americans within this country. And everybody else was talking about how their great-greats were like on the Mayflower, this, that, and the third. And so that always struck a chord with me about my identity and where I stood in this country. And that was part of the reason why I wanted to create Melanin Meetups is I wanted us, while we're not a monolith, I wanted us to begin to connect and begin to develop our narrative and create a stronger narrative moving forward in the 21st century, and begin to connect around certain themes and experiences, which is why I created that safe space for us to do when we meet monthly.
Nice. I think it's really interesting what you all are doing. And I think, what are the major goals of Melanin Meetup? I know you say you want to change the narrative and stuff like that, but what does that, I guess, tangibly look like?
Gotcha. So when we come to the meetups, there's three things that we try to focus on. And the first thing is we try to question America's civic religion and how it pertains to our experience. So that means asking the tough questions, if you will, how do we feel about the founding fathers? How do we feel about the labels around how we define ourselves? How do we feel about certain holidays within this country? Just asking questions that I feel like need to be asked. And it's always fascinating to see what types of answers come from that. But nevertheless, those are the conversations that we need to start discussing. The second thing is leveraging industry. As again, my background is business. So with that being said, I encourage people to try to understand the structures of this country, and that is capitalism. So with that being said, when we begin to leverage industry, I don't have experience in AI or the medical field, but there are people that come here to these meetups that do, and they say, hey, look, these are some of the things that we're working on. Here's some of the solutions that we're coming up with. Here's what we need to be on the lookout for moving forward in the 21st century as it pertains to the Black American community. So we connect through that. And then the third thing is simply connecting and understanding our shared experiences. When the people that come to my house each month, we've got LGBTQ AI, we've got Muslim, we've got Christian, we've got all these different walks of life within the Black American community. That touch on experiences that some people have never heard of or know nothing about, and to watch that happen too is fascinating. So with those three things working in motion, that's what I believe will begin to help facilitate a stronger narrative, if you will.
So in thinking about you have people from such diverse professional backgrounds, and they bring a lot of insight and knowledge from different experiences. They bring a lot of insight and knowledge from different experiences and perspectives. How did you get the word out to build such a diverse set of minds to come together for this?
That's a good question. I honestly, it's funny. Sorry, I'm taking a moment because it's actually hilarious because I just kind of put myself out there and just started. Again, I was new to LA. I guess I had surrounded myself with good, headstrong people from the community, and told them, hey, look, this is what I'm trying to do. They helped me spread the word. I launched a Facebook group, a private Facebook group, and began to loop them in. They began to let their friends come in, and just started blasting it out on social. And that was the people that I was attracting to these groups. They were young professionals. And again, we're out here on the front lines every day, the young professionals. I think people are so used to kind of seeing like celebrities from our community speak out, or, whether they be politicians, but the ones who are really on the front lines that have to deal with, whether it's microaggression or whether, experiences that are really impactful to them, deal with that on a day-to-day basis. And so we were just all kind of connecting and sharing our stories, and word traveled, and more people started coming each month, and I just grew it from there. Yeah.
Nice. Thinking about that too, and even from your background, you're saying in marketing and stuff like that. And from your own experience, do you have any examples of situations, and I'm sure you do, of when you had to handle like microaggressions in the workplace and navigating around those situations?
Oh yeah, for sure. And I had grown out my hair probably 2017 to 2018. It was pretty high, and a guy at work, he's new to America. He's probably been here for maybe about 3-4 years, but he touched my hair.
Oh, wow.
And I said, but then I stopped him and I said, he was like, oh, it looks different. It's very like spongy. And my whole thing was this. I said, I won't name his name, but I was like, you got a lot to learn with regards to American culture, first and foremost. But then the second thing is, I said, do you not respect personal space? I said, that's just just inappropriate. And he kind of looked at me like he was baffled, but yeah. These little things that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, they're real. They are real.
Yeah, that is, it's such a huge issue. I actually thought you were going to say that, maybe your company had, said something about you growing out your hair, because that's been a huge issue. But touching of the hair, that's a issue as well. Like Solange said, don't touch. So in thinking about your platform, Melanin Meetups, I guess, what are some of the most interesting discussions or takeaways that have come from some of the discussions that you've had thus far?
The one that pops out the most, it was probably about 2 months before Charlottesville, and I had asked the question, when people come to the meetups, I distribute surveys, because that's what kickstarts the conversation. And one of the questions that I asked was, should we still honor, which is a valid question, should we still honor and deify, if you will, the founding fathers of this country, given their track record? With Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemings and George Washington, tracking down one of their slaves, and spent 3 years, I think, looking for a slave after she left. All of these types of things. And it was the most fascinating thing. There was probably about 30 people in the room, and it was split. Some people were saying, I think that maybe we shouldn't what they did was wrong, but at the same time, this is our country. And the other half of the room said, we shouldn't. Why do we have to honor those who were believed in slavery, believed in this chattel system, and essentially created this chattel system and this caste system that we still see the effects today. And that was very telling, and it was very powerful to watch people from my community kind of go back and forth, and but again, these conversations are things that I want us to begin to have, and it has everything to do with us. And I always put the emphasis back on us. It has nothing to do with anybody else but us. How do we want to move moving forward? What issues, or things do we want to talk about? So yeah, and then literally a few months later, that's when Charlottesville happened, and that was telling. So.
That's interesting, because I think, like you said, one of the things you said earlier on, and what a lot of people say when we talk about the Black community, is that we're not monolithic in a lot of ways, right? Which is true. And I think even when a thing like in Charlottesville happened, and just a lot of times we just automatically assume that when it comes to these historical images and whether they be statues or whatever kind of historical representation of things that may be linked to slavery, the idea is that maybe all black folks are against it, right, or feel one type of way about it. But you just highlighted, even within your conversations, that no, I mean, within our community, there are people who feel like, oh, it's not, may not be that big of a deal, or may not feel as strongly as far as about dismantling these statues and these things that have particular historical representations. So I think that's pretty cool that, like you said, that these discussions are happening in these spaces, and it just highlights that very point that we shouldn't just take for granted that everybody feels the same way when these events happen, right? That we all feel the same way and want to see the same things happen. There are probably many of us who feel differently about it, and all voices should be heard, before moving forward. I think it's pretty cool.
Right. And that's what I want to create, that safe space to where we can begin to have these conversations and, begin to talk and begin to just figure us out. Because it's a fascinating time to be, if you will, black in this country specifically. It is a fascinating time. And you're watching this kind of, in my opinion, kind of like look around and say, okay, well, how do we want to move forward? What do we look like in the 21st century? All of these things are happening. And thank God for technology, because it's connecting us even more. But what do we want? What's our ask? And that's what I want to keep pushing towards. So.
Nice. And I guess my next question goes along with that too, right? Because having the discussions is one thing, and getting everyone's voices heard and on the table, and then trying to figure out what the next moves would be. And so what are some of, I guess, the action items that have come from this platform? I noticed on your website, I've seen you highlight particular people running for public office in some way. I see that you have a blog and stuff like that. So can you explain that a little bit more for our audience? What are some of the things that have come out of these conversations?
Right. So we started taking the polls again when we began this thing in 2017, and we kind of said, in terms of the first items that we want to begin to tackle, where we can begin to create change, was on the political front and the political/education front, as well as the entertainment front for the time being. And so we decided to begin to raise funds last year for the midterms, for political candidates running in the midterms. And I messed up. So we started to raise funds for political candidates in the midterms of 2018, and two of the candidates, went on to become to essentially rewrite the narrative and break historical ground. One was Everson Blair Jr., became the first melanated person in Gwinnett County's history to be on the Board of Education in its 200-year history. Another one was Malcolm Kenyatta, who became the first openly gay, they're saying, candidate of color to win a Pennsylvania House seat. So things like that. It's all about, we're coming from different walks of life, and we want to continue to support candidates from our community that are from different walks of life and that are breaking ground, and that can help us create the change that we want, and also help us to push our message out there. And then add on to that, with the blog 7035, the meaning behind that is that's Rosa Parks' prison number. And what I wanted to do with that is to, we come from, to be proud of that, for lack of better words, to just be proud of that, that we've always been at the forefront of empathy, if you will, of fighting for human rights, and always pushing forward toward this ideal of the American experiment. And we started, I wanted to interview, young Black professionals, influencers, celebrities, more so in that space of how they're using their platform in today's day and age to be unapologetically Black, and what they are doing for their community in terms of going back to that business mindset strategy. How are they building what they're building? How are they connecting? How are they giving back? What ideas and solutions can you give from your own industry that we can essentially apply to other industries? So that's the second thing. And then the third thing is what we're doing actually this year, we're going to launch hopefully on Juneteenth, is a conference that I'm calling Illuminate, where we invite young Black professionals and influencers to come out and speak from different sectors and industries about ideas and solutions and challenges that we're going to face as a Black American community on the international front, domestic front, and the internal front, meaning mental health and all that good stuff. So, yeah.
Nice.
That's so awesome.
It really is.
One thing that I was thinking about, and it relates to something you mentioned before, like keeping a pulse on, what members are thinking and helping that to guide your discussion. But I also saw on your site that you have the intentions of publishing a report based on like the cultural surveys that you do at, every meetup. So I guess, can you tell us a little bit more about that? What do you hope to accomplish by, publishing a report on these cultural surveys?
So for me, that goes back to the model of creating like a white paper report and, aligning the vision with more so of a think tank. And those reports, I want to push out through the research that we've collected, but push out to the community and, let them know like this is where we're at. This is what we're kind of thinking to get the conversation going. And to get more people involved, and in order to begin to build out a way forward, if you will, or direction of what we want our narrative to look like in the 21st century, and how we want to move forward. So the questions that we ask at these meetups, and the answers as a result, one of the questions that I asked, do we believe that we're incredibly fragmented as a community? And 96% of the people within Melanin Meetups had agreed, yes, we are incredibly fragmented. And I want to push out those reports and get the conversation going. Don't ask me how I'm going to get them out just yet, one day at a time. But I definitely want that to begin to be pushed out to our community and, have us begin to, again, focus on us and what we want. So, yeah.
This is just a quick thought I've had too, and because I'm just, somebody who's listening to what you all do and what I feel like would be super interesting, and I'm not sure if you all thought about this or even if everyone feels comfortable with this, but I feel like because you already have this platform set up, if there was a way to document these conversations in some capacity, right? Maybe if they were, maybe filmed and put on the Facebook group or a Facebook Live group or something like that, or on YouTube. If people, of course, were comfortable with it, it's an idea where, it may just serve as a space where people can go and actually listen and hear these different kinds of dialogues and perspectives. And I think that can even be really meaningful in a learning experience,
Right.
Just hearing about what you all talk about and the kind of conversations you have. I think, creating even broader access, like you said earlier, technology is a wonderful tool, and you can reach, you guys are based out there in the West Coast, but it can reach people in many different areas of the country or even the world, if that's a goal of yours. Yeah.
And I thought I did, and it's something that I want to do, but I also too, sometimes I feel like I walk a fine line because I want people when they come here to feel safe and be fearless in what they want to say. And I'm telling you, it gets pretty heated because we cover a lot of ground, from everything. And so what I do try to, that's something that I do want to implement in 2019, but I do try to follow up with notes in our private Facebook group or our listserv and say, these are some of the things that we covered, and some people will email me back and say, hey, I'd like to talk about this, or here goes my opinion on that. So that's great. But yeah, no, I definitely, it's interesting because even I've gotten some questions about the white paper reports. Some people have been frank and candid, and I love that. And Melanin Meetups, they're just like, I don't necessarily know if maybe you should do that, Kirk, because what happens when we begin to put out information about ourselves, and history has shown us some things of what happened. And so I get it, and that's but again, these are real fears and concerns. For sure. And when Black coalesces, it's always met with some form of resistance. I understand that too. So I'm doing I guess what I'm saying is I'm trying to do the best I can based on what history has taught me. I think we're all trying to do the best we can in the 21st century, especially our generation, and what history has taught us, and how to move forward. But I, to your point, I agree. I believe that I talk about being unapologetic in every bit of the sense, but at the same time, I do try to understand where certain people are coming from, and I get it.
Oh yeah.
I hope that answers the question.
Oh no, for real. Those are real concerns, and I was just throwing that out there. Just something to potentially think about, of course. And you seem like you would take all the right considerations, keep that in mind with those who get involved. And of course, I'm only imagining to be something that people who would want to contribute in that fashion and not mind having those conversations, be in the public sphere. Participate for sure, and you continue to have the safe space element for sure for those who would like to be a part of that in that capacity. But one of my follow-up questions too is, one, I wanted you to kind of give advice to people who may be thinking about starting up something similar to Melanin Meetups, right, in their own communities, in their own cities, towns, etc. But before we even get to that, I think the question that I had in mind too is, what do you say? Because you're in a position that I'm not really familiar with, right? Maybe working in corporate and being a person of color in this world, and I often hear stories or narratives, and you kind of express some of that too, that it's very difficult sometimes to go out on that ledge because those spaces are very much different than academic spaces where it may be the norm to be part of a group that's for black folk or whatever it is, right? Or to create something that's for black folk. So what would you say to somebody that's sitting maybe in a position that is similar to yours, maybe occupation, etc., and that wants to partake or be vocal in these kind of situations, but they may not feel as comfortable because of their profession? How would you help give them advice to kind of navigate out of that situation?
You know what I say, and I'm going to break this down, and because your question is very complex, but it needs to be, it's complex because we're complex, and I mean Black Americans, we are very complex, we're very nuanced. So my parents, right? They're from the South, and they raised me in two different worlds, as I say. They knew the world that I was going to grow up in within this country. They saw that. They went through that. So they gave me that history, but then they also gave me the real history. So that's something that we, in general, as Black Americans, we balance every day. We are able to go in and out of these. We're incredibly nuanced. We're able to go in and out of these worlds, and we operate with a sense of reality. With that being said, this is what I will tell people, and it's hard, and I understand it, trust me, but you are already a walking truth. And what I mean by that is your existence in this country is truth. You can't hide that. You can't hide it. And what I mean by that is you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. And you have to embrace all of you. You have to trust yourself, but know that you can't hide who you are. You literally cannot hide who you are. Your skin is heavily melanated. You've got your nose is maybe protruding. You have bulbous lips. You've got kinky curly hair. You may be tall, you may be short, you may be tall. It doesn't matter, but you are a walking truth within this country. You are the truth. And that's what I always say. It's like, if not now, when? Do not be afraid. And I know it's a lot easier said than done, but don't be afraid to speak out. Don't be afraid to fight for yourself, to show up for yourself. And I do believe this is truly one of the reasons why I launched Melanin Meetups, is because we are trying to, Black Americans have always done a fantastic job of taking things that were taking things and making them great. Even their identity, just taking things and be okay, well, essentially we don't have an identity. We don't know where Black Americans specifically, we don't have really a great understanding of where we come from, but we're gonna turn it into something great. That is a powerful narrative. And the more we begin to honor that narrative that, we come from a human chattel system, that even my own lineage is tied up in this mess. But nevertheless, our resilience is so powerful. And we begin to honor that narrative, whether it be through, symbols or anything, messaging, whatever. And we begin to unite around that. That gives more strength to being more truthful and unapologetic, and you don't have anything to worry about. But until that time comes, I would just encourage, I would really encourage people who are looking to do these types of things in America, and you are Black and you identify as Black, to know that you can't hide who you are. You cannot hide who you are. There's no reason to be afraid. And I know it's a lot easier said than done, but there's no reason to be afraid. So yeah.
Nice. No, appreciate that.
Thank you. That was really powerful. And that's a good message. Yes, embrace it, folks. Embrace it. So this has been like a really, really interesting discussion, and we've asked a lot, but we also want to give you a platform to, be able to, say something or talk about something that we didn't ask you about. So is there, anything that we didn't discuss that you'd like to mention?
I would like to say, I am a student of history, and I did want to say this. It's fascinating, and it ties into your podcast, especially with the name. You have an Ivy League educated guy like myself, and I'm finding out more about my history through Instagram and memes, and that is so powerful, and it's very telling. And I would just encourage people throughout the community, specifically Black Americans, dig and fight for your history. Try to understand as much as possible, because the more that you begin to understand and search for your history, the more you begin to understand yourself. And that narrative and that identity becomes so much stronger. You become a lot more proud. I can talk to you about European history till I'm blue in the face. That was something that was taught. And everything else, my parents basically taught me, but they only know so much either. They didn't grow up in the internet age. So I would just really encourage the people that are listening to this, to really begin to fight for your history. And whether it's going on Wikipedia, you see a name that it comes across in an article in Blavity or something, you're like, well, I want to find out more about it. Do it. Take 2 minutes out of your day to just do it. Because that creates a stronger identity for you, and it gives you purpose. So that's the one thing that I want to leave your audiences with.
Nah, appreciate that, man. Really appreciate that. I do got one more question before we head out. It's kind of a funny question. Does anyone ever think that the name of the website, Melanin Meetups, do they ever think it's a dating website?
No, I don't. No one's told me that yet.
Okay.
No.
The reason I asked is because I was on a laptop sitting next to my wife when I was plugging in your website doing some research, and then I guess she saw the name like Melanin Meetups, and she looked at me like, Negro, what are you doing? And I didn't think of it at first. I'm like, what you mean? I looked at the name. I said, oh, I can see where you can take this. But no, this is not what that's about.
Though. That's interesting because I'm telling you, my background is marketing, and that's pretty interesting that you said that. So
yeah, it was just funny. That's why I was just asking you that question, man.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, when you click the site, it's all serious. You're like, wait, what?
Yeah, it's like, no, it's not what you think, babe. It's not what you think. Relax. Plus, I'd be crazy to try to do that right next to her anyway. That'd be psycho, right?
I know.
She'd kill me. But no, this been a great conversation, man. Tell our listeners where they can find you, social media, all that kind of stuff.
Great. So you can find us on melaninmeetups.org. That's M as in mom, ELANIN, and then meetups. We have a private Facebook group, and you just type in Melanin Meetups and you're right there, and then I'll go ahead and let you come in. And then I encourage you to please join our listserv, because that's where I send out invites for, especially right now, it's all based in the Los Angeles area for the meetups. But we are going to expand. But nevertheless, if you're in the Los Angeles area specifically, regardless, just join our listserv. But if you're in the Los Angeles area, please feel free to come to our next meetups. And you can find us on Instagram at MMUPSX.
Nice. Awesome, and we'll be sure to tag those in the description when we air this episode for sure.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, guys.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Yo, Dad, so what you think about Kirk Brown coming join us today about Melanin Meetups?
I thought it was an awesome conversation. I think the platform is really great. It reminds me a lot of BHD in terms of like trying to have real conversations, trying to have dialogue with many different perspectives as a way to, potentially create change. And I think it's an awesome platform.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think sometimes, and I know we've had conversations about this in our podcast before with other folks, and I think it's just something to reiterate as well. Like me and you, we're in academic spaces, so I think naturally we get a lot of these kind of conversations. We have a lot of these dialogues, right, when we're in those settings. But then we have to think about most of the folks who are not in these academic settings anymore, who are in professional settings, who maybe like Kirk said, he was only one of two Black folk working where he works. And so you kind of crave that. If you want that kind of dialogue or have these kind of conversations, you're not in those spaces anymore. And so it's tough. So it really makes a lot of sense to create these platforms, to create these spaces for people who want to come together and have this dialogue, or just express themselves, or it can be therapeutic, or release, or whatever's going on, because they're not just naturally there like how it may be for other folks.
Like sometimes when I'm at home, I'm like, I need to watch some TV because, I have these types of conversations and sometimes I need to get away from it. But when you think about, depending on the sector you work in, you actually might not be able to have these conversations. It could be taboo in the workforce. And I just really like the fact that it's people from so many different sectors, because we all, regardless of your professional background, regardless of, the degree you have, we all have experiences and different perspectives that we can bring to the table. And I feel like when you have a meeting of the minds that's just so diverse in that way, you can't help but to win. That's a winning situation.
And this is really powerful too, because it's just like when you start off with just conversation with such a diverse group, and then I feel like any action that comes from those particular conversations will be probably way more impactful, because they've covered so many perspectives, and also they're going to have a lot more buy-in from the different people, right, that are part of it. And everybody's going to be more supportive of it from whatever networks they're a part of, because they've had a voice in the process. So I think that blueprint is really powerful, right? And I think it needs to be implemented in a lot more spaces for sure.
One thing I can say is I like the idea of the Juneteenth conference, as well as the, white paper report that he wants to use from some of the data that he's collected. Considering the fact that we are researchers, I love data, and I'm pretty sure you do too. So the fact that, writing a report or generating conversation based on real data, I think that's so important. I would go to the conference, and I definitely read the white paper.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because even as he was talking about these things, I'm like, man, I had gave the suggestion of making these things public, but in my head also, I'm like, man, this would be like great qualitative research, like being a focus group, or just sitting there and just taking in the topics of conversation and the various perspectives, and being able to interview these folks. Just like, I'm like, yo, this can be like really good information that we don't see that much of, these kind of think tank spaces.
Yeah. And actually, creating a, melanin or African-American based think tank and generating these ideas from our perspective, this is a very innovative idea. I love it.
For sure. I think we need to start building off these ideas somehow. There's so many things, whether it be conferences, whether it be in some official capacity. Because I like he said, and I think we're all around the same age. I think part of our generation is that we have, especially post-Trump era, like what he said, one of the reasons is like you have all of these, you have access to technology. We know how to use it, and we're educated, college educated. Maybe not everyone, but you have this kind of rigor, this inspiration to do something. And I think a lot of us are starting to do that. And I think we need to come together, figure out ways to come together, work together to make it even more impactful. Even like I'm really excited, or I'm really inspired by what I've seen them do with even just the election of the local politicians they had there, or not even the politicians, but like even to the Board of Ed, which is the first time in 200 years to having a person of color on that particular seat. I mean, that stuff is really, really meaningful, right? And I think that can, even just now when I'm thinking about it, can really change the lives or protect students of color who are part of that school district or whoever that oversees, right? Just having that one person on that board will even cause white folk who are on that board to be careful of what they say or think, right? Before, if there's nobody on there, just that presence alone, I think will also make a lot of extreme changes. So I think stuff like that, man, we just need to have a lot more conversations and actions oriented around that kind of stuff.
Yep, I agree. I agree.
But nonetheless, we like to say thanks, Kirk, for coming out to talk to us. All of you, be sure to check out Melanin Meetups. Again, it is not a dating website. All right.
Although you might find your somebody.
You may find somebody, but that is not the intent. But I can understand how you may think that, but it's not the intent. It would be a pretty cool dating website name, though, Melanin Meetups. But that's not the intent, folks. We're meeting up for intellectual endeavors, okay?
Yes.
But jokes aside, we really appreciate Kirk and what he's doing, and we're going to continue to watch the growth of Melanin Meetups and support it as well, as we all should. We're a community. We should always continue to do that. And for those of you who are new to the podcast, continue to follow us. So follow us on social media at BHD Podcast is our social media handle. Follow us on our website, www.blackandhighlydangerous.com, to keep up with all our latest content, whether it be the podcast, whether it be the blog posts, etc. Email us, bhdpodcast@gmail.com, if you have ideas, or if you're like Kirk, you want to come on and you want us to, give light to your platform. We're always open to doing that, but just ideas, we always welcome all kinds of things as well. And continue to rate us on iTunes. It's very helpful to us. If you listen to us, you appreciate the content, just do us that one favor, right? Rate us on iTunes. And on top of that, share us with your friends, share us with your family, and share us with your enemies. And as always, continue to be the oppressor's worst fear.
If you're interested in continuing this and other conversations, visit our website, blackandhighlydangerous.com, to subscribe to our email list, suggest topics, and participate in our discussion forums.
Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at BHD Podcast. And please don't forget to subscribe and rate our podcast on your favorite platform. And as always, continue to be the oppressor's worst fear.